Well, you can't buy graphics cards very easily, well, at least not NVIDIA ones. So we're gonna talk today about the new Corsair 4000D frame. I think computer cases are kind of fun because, I mean, it's the thing you look at, to be honest, and you have to try hard these days to really set yourself apart. And the Corsair 4000 frame, or 4000, well, I guess they're calling it the Frame 4000 series. It's actually quite a bit different for Corsair. So we'll kind of do a little mock-up and see. Actually, if it might be one of the most competitive $100 cases. So let's see what is actually different about the Frame series. The all-new Silent Loop 3 from Be Quiet is finally available in the United States and features a new damped pump design with a 6-pole motor for ultra-quiet operation, giant cold plate with Threadripper compatibility, tasteful and minimalistic RGB design, and is available in 240, 360, and 420mm variants, providing plenty of cooling for even the most demanding CPUs of today. The refill port and provided coolant mean you never have to worry about evaporation leading to pump failure, providing a longer life and less downtime and cost for your rig. To see the full list of specs and features, follow the sponsored link in the description below. I'll be honest, the last time I interacted with the 4000 series or the 4000D, back when we did the Scholars Collective build, I think that was the last time we actually talked about the 4000D or 4000 series. It's always been one of the more affordable cases by Corsair. So when they were like, hey, do you want to take a look at the 4000 series and whatnot, I was like, I guess. I mean, budget cases are kind of neat. They're like, yeah, but this is a completely different approach to cases. So it was kind of a no-brainer for us to take a look at this already by looking at the outside. And I'll caveat this with the fact that I have seen it in person prior to unboxing it right now. Actually, it was when we were at Micro Center the other day. I almost bought it for our $1,500 build, but I didn't because I knew we were gonna be doing this. It's already a bit more premium feeling than the 4000D was. And that's one of the things that they're going for. The 4000 series has always been one of their more affordable approaches to a mid-tower case, but this time it has a lot more premium feel. So we'll talk about the top panel real quick. It's got a curved metal bend to it, which is kind of nice rather than just being a flat piece of metal. I actually wish I had a 4000 case right now, 4000D to compare it to. It's got the mesh with the Y in there. They've kind of moved on to this sort of a Y sort of a shape. You might be asking why they did that. Yeah, I hate myself too, don't worry. If you put a fan very near a grill, especially if it's like round or square or mesh or whatever, as the blades go by, it's sort of chopping between air and solid, right? So if you have like long strips of opening, as a blade goes around, you kind of start to hear this real turbulent, choppy sound. And they've kind of found that the shape of this Y like this actually really quiets down that sort of a, I don't want to necessarily call it turbulence, but it's the way that the blade impacts going past solid and open mesh. So they found that that Y material, or that Y shape, really cuts down the amount of audible interference, if you will, between the blades going past. It is tempered glass. Ooh, it's actually fairly thick too. It does have some metal frame on either side to sort of protect it from any sort of drop or impact, so it's not actually hitting the glass if you were to drop it. Keep that in mind though. It's never a good idea to drop tempered glass. You might be noticing the front mesh right here. It looks like a cheese grater. Okay, I'm sorry, it reminds me of the Apple cheese grater front end. But, so when it comes to the front mesh, it really does look like a cheese grater. I wish we had some cheese right now. I kind of want to try and grate it. But if you look at it this way, you can see they're calling it their 3D mesh. So it's not just like this panel here, where it's just a flat plane of porosity, if you will. The porosity on this would be very interesting to measure because it's not flat. So this actually allows for less restriction, but they've decided to make it 3D. I have no information whatsoever about what this does for the airflow at all. I would like to imagine it'd be less restrictive, but I have no way of measuring that. It is neat looking though. The first thing Phil says is that looks dangerous. Like if you were to trip and be like, oops, and then you grated your hand along it. But as you can hear, it's smooth. It's not gonna cut you on both sides. It's very smooth. Phil, you can feel it. It's actually quite rounded, if you will. You can see now we have our magnetic air filter, magnets on the bottom, a little latch at the top. So when you go to put it on, it's pretty simple. Just put it up in there and it magnets on and it comes off. So that is accessing the front. We have the same not cheese grater, but the Y mesh kind of everywhere. We got it on the back panel. We've got it on all the I/O covers right here. We've got it on the mid plate. We've got it on the side. This side piece is also removable, which is also taped on during transit. Are you supposed to remove this before use? I would assume so, otherwise what's the point of it, right? Sure, I'm removing it. See, it looks translucent, like maybe it was designed to maybe transfuse or diffuse some lighting through there, but no, why would we do that? So now you can get a good shot right here of what the bottom panel looks like. Power supply. You can mount fans right here to pull air through if you wanted to give you direct airflow to your graphics card. All right, so start talking about the insides here. This is where it matters, and this is where the case starts to become interesting, because up until this point, it's like, bro, it's just a case. What is so exciting about it? The frame is fully modular. We've heard that before as well, but the idea here is that you can take the frame and make changes to it in the future, upgrade parts, replace parts entirely. Corsair is gonna be offering components in different colors. So you could start like mix and matching colors with different components, like the motherboard tray, the front panels, the mid panels, all that stuff. So the idea here is that this is going to be completely moddable, customizable as parts become available for it. And some of these parts are actually gonna be on sale already on Corsair's website. Now, ooh, I like this sleeve right here. This is nice. So they got all the front panel stuff sleeved together up until this point. Now, because it's BTF, as you can see, there's a lot of openings that, if you're not using a BTF type of board or whatever, there's no grommets right here. So you just have this nice open area that you can kind of move wires through, but you've got obviously these Velcro straps, so you can keep it sort of hidden, pull these off to where you want them to be. But let's just say, for instance, in the future, for Phil's sake, and the constant, ever-evolving standard of USB-C, you could actually change out this entire front panel here that has the USB connectivity, add more USB, or you could have full-size headphone jacks, whatever is developed for the front panel right here. But you could change out this, it's modular, and as the standards change in the future, could upgrade the USB-C or the USB standard, whatever, in your case as more standards become available. Now they have this built-in anti-sag post, if you will, that is built into the cable shroud. So you just can turn the knob by hand, and then it's rubber, or on the back it's rubber, so it has a good grip and it won't sag. And then you can just move this up and down. Before we move on to like talking about the InfiniRail and all that for the fans, and the fact that this small case could actually fit two 360mm radiators in here, or up to 12 120mm fans, I want to see what comes in the accessory box right here. Okay, so we've got a thing, we've got a bag, we got a bada boom, and then we've got a few things going on here. Oh, maybe this wasn't trash. Maybe we are supposed to keep that. I guess I'll hang on to that for a second. Why would we want to make that solid? Whatever. Okay, so we have a fan bracket here. This is obviously gonna be for potential AIOs and such. If you were putting fans here and you wanted to pull air through, it would be best to have this open. That way it could pull air through that. I'm assuming if you're not using fans there, you would want to leave this maybe not open. That way the air that's blowing this way doesn't just come out the side. I'm assuming that's what that would be for. This kind of a translucent white would be neat for diffusing light, I guess, or you could just black it out entirely. It's a little thicker too. You could black it out entirely with this guy, so that just blacks it out entirely. It is plastic, so it's not like a cheap solution, but there. So that's what you kind of get right there. It just sort of blacks it out. All right, so let's just talk about some of the key specs here. Obviously for motherboards, mini ITX all the way up through EATX, 305mm by 277mm. It's got room for two 3.5-inch hard drives, four 2.5-inch SSDs. Of course, it's not counting NVMEs. Those would be on the motherboard. Available in black and white. It's tempered glass. As we already talked about, their mesh design for the front is a 3D Y airflow made out of steel. It's got 37mm of depth for rear cable management space. So that's kind of nice. The front can support 3 120mm fans, 2 140mm fans, or 2 200mm fans, making it awesome for airflow builds. The top can support 3 120s or 2 140s, and the side panel can fit 3 120s or 2 140s as well. The PSU shroud also can have an additional 2 120mm fans on there, and the rear can support a 120 or a 140mm. Now, radiator compatibility, the front can fit a 360mm, a 280mm, or a 240mm. The top can fit a 360, 280, or 240, and the side can also fit a 360, 280, or 240. The rear can fit a 120 or a 140. Now, you can't fit Now you cannot fit 3 360mm radiators in here at the same time. So you would have to choose between a 360 front and a 360 top, or like a 360 side and a 360 top, but you could not fit all three in at the same time. Now that's what this bracket's for right here, because this replaces that. As you can see, the screw hole right there. So this is how you would mount fans in the motherboard position right here. So you can mount fans there as intakes or do the radiator right there, but you cannot fit a 360mm rad in all three spots. That's just gonna have to do because of the clearances of depth of fans and rad protruding into the case area, as well as the front fans protruding into the case area. So you have a choice. You can go with ultra clean cable shroud right here with the GPU sag bracket, or you can remove that, have more intake fans. You could have 3 intakes on the front, 3 intakes on the sides. You have a total of 6 120mm worth of intake going into the front, and then 360 worth of exhaust on the top, or plus a 120 exhaust on the back, or 140s. The fan is always gonna mount on this side, and you've got 1, 2, or 3. That's because although they don't mention it on their online manual, the review guide does mention you can fit a 120, a 140, or a 160 fan on here. Now 160mm fans are kind of rare, but they are starting to show up in more cases. So you could fit 2 160mm fans on here. Now you might be asking yourself, why would you go a bigger fan, like say a 160mm or even the 200mm fans, which we mentioned are able to be fit on the front? Well, that's because of high CFM, low speed. So the bigger blades can move a bigger amount of air at a lower RPM, making them very quiet, but also high airflow. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of people will opt, if they're doing air cooling builds, to like to go with the larger fans on the intakes, because they can move a lot slower, which means that there's moving even potentially less dust, and they have a high CFM at a lower RPM. So that's one of the reasons why you would do that. Now, one of the ways that you do it on the front right here to support the 200s, and this is where the modularity comes in, is they have the InfiniRail system. So if you notice right here, there's just 2 rods that go from bottom to top on both sides. It's kind of difficult to see, but there is actually an adjustment screw. By loosening these screws, and they're marked 120, 140, 160, and then the whole rail just slides left and right. So you've got this one rail that's built in on the top, and then this one that adjusts. The same thing exists on the front, but only both move left or right. That's to support 120, 140, or even 200. Now, one thing this does not do is it does not invert or do anything weird like that. It's not like a convertible case where the insides can flip around to make it inverted. The whole idea here is that you can change out the different components for different color schemes or different colorways to try and modularity customize it that way, but also to allow you to be able to change out parts for future compatibility. Now, in terms of vertical mount, let's talk about that for a second here. You can convert this back panel right here with these thumb screws. You'll notice so far the theme here is toolless. I don't even have a screwdriver with me. You can pop this out, flip this way, and now, once you get that to line up in its spot, you have now moved over to a more vertical type of layout. And whereas a lot of cases will only support 2 I/O on the vertical, this can actually support up to 4 slot width. So now as we get bigger graphics cards that take up more space, you actually have more adjustability on where that graphics card can mount down on the vertical mount to make sure that you're not too close to the side panel and choking off all the airflow. And obviously though, you would have to separately purchase the vertical mount for having this mounted up to your motherboard. Now, in terms of components that you can fit in here, you can fit a GPU length up to 430mm and 170mm worth of CPU cooler height. So pretty much all of your major CPU coolers will fit inside this case. Down here, we also have another mount for drives. There it is right here. You can take this out if you want to. You could actually use it for mounting a pump or something if you wanted, because it is designed to be a water cooler for any case. But you can also see they have these little indents right here, because obviously they're trying to incorporate their IQ Link system as much as they can. So the little hub, which is just a little magnetic square, could just bloop right down there. And then one of the things that this case also features is provisions where they have like little snap-in rails where the wire, for the single wire for the IQ Link system, can snap in, and you can cable manage that, which is really easy. But this bottom piece does actually have 3 different positions it can mount in, depending on how much length you need for your power supply. So if you're running a larger power supply that's potentially longer, you can scoot this more out of the way. Or if you're running radiators and stuff in the front with push-pull fans or whatever, you can scoot this away from the front to give yourself more clearance there so nothing is impacting. Okay, let's do this. I'm gonna do kind of a mock-up. I'm gonna throw some parts in here. I guess we'll just see overall like how well everything sort of fits in this case. It's a fairly small footprint of a case, although it is a little bit longer, it is a little bit wider, and a little bit taller than the 4000D, previous 4000D generation. But let's see what kind of stuff we can fit in here. All right, so one of the things I'm gonna do is, although this is the 4000D ARGB version, which has their fans in here, I'm actually gonna pull their fans out. And I have a bunch of these Link fans. These are the RX 120s, these are the RS 120s. I'm assuming the major difference between these two is going to be one is Link and one is not. Now the kit, as far as I can remember from the past, does actually include an adapter that goes from Link to standard ARGB, because these are standard ARGB headers, as you can see right here. Where are they? They're all kind of tied down. Yeah, right here. So these are just standard 4-pin ARGB. But I just kind of want to, I wanted to see how their ecosystem is. Well, we figured we'd start with some big hardware to see what you can fit in there. It is a small chassis though, but as you can see, you could fit a 4090 Astral in there.
4090?
Oh, 5090, yeah, sorry. It's been a long year already. Could still fit a radiator there for an AIO if we wanted. And there'd be plenty of room for AIO at the top as well. So in terms of the cooler, this is the Thermalright Phantom Spirit 120 or whatever I think it's called. It's pretty cool. So I switched the fans out that came with it to the IQ fans. So I would recommend, or not the IQ fans, but the Link fans. So I would recommend, if you were going to be changing the fans, maybe don't go with the ARGB variant, because if you're just gonna rip the fans out, why pay, I think it's like 10 extra bucks to have the variant with the fans if you're just gonna take them out. Because as you can see, even though they do daisy chain somewhat neatly, and then they give you these extension cables to run them, and they're already run along with the harness that's in there. All 7 of these fans, these three, and this one, are all connected via one cable. So there's only one cable in the back of the system that's controlling those fans. And speaking of back, the feet are very grippy. So I used an RM1000X shift. So as you can see, the cables are coming out right here. This is nice because that way you can put in the power supply first and then still plug your cables in, not to be trying to reaching in there. It means it's not going to interfere cable-wise with anything that might be in the front if we were using that for, say, the drive cage or mounting a 3.5-inch drive or whatever there. But as you can see, the Link hub is right there. This one wire, this is the one wire right here controlling the fans and stuff, which is kind of neat. I do like the fact that it is very difficult to make it any neater than this. Now you do have 3 cables going to the hub. You've got the micro USB connector that goes to motherboard USB for control, and then you've got a 6-pin PCI Express power cable going to this instead of a SATA. They do that because of the fact that you're getting full 12-volt RGB through here rather than 5-volt. So you need to have a higher input voltage and wattage, which is what you can get with PCI Express versus, say, the SATA plug. And because of the fact that it's a beefier cable, you can put more load on it than feeling like you're going to overload a SATA cable. So that's one of the reasons why they did that. But that's everything wired in here. The Velcro straps don't hold as tight as I would like. Like, as you can see right here, my 24-pin puts a lot of stress on this one. It likes to pop open every now and then. I would have preferred to see some actual zip tie mounts here as well. That way I could have zip tied that down if I wanted. Now let's talk about this shroud right here real quick, because I do have the anti-sag bracket currently holding up the graphics card. If for some reason we were removing this to put in this vertical bracket right here to have additional fan intake, this bracket allows us to mount it on this rail. As you can see, that's built in. Where is it? Right here on the inside? It's somewhere here. Anyway, there are screws that allow you to mount that on the inside. and then you can just transfer that little post over to here, and then you can maintain your anti-GPU sag bracket. Anti-sag GPU bracket, there, that. This guy right here is just for covering up some of the cables that might show. It's literally just a flap that's intended to make it look prettier, and because it's magnetic, that way you don't necessarily, because there's a gap right here, so you can see through there if you, I don't think I put that on there the right way. I'm not sure which way it goes, but anyway, this is intended to just kind of block off some of that opening. That way you're not seeing these cables through these gaps and holes. Other thing too, like we talked about on the bottom, this is intended to be catching light on the other side to make it, I guess, more interesting on the bottom. And earlier I said that it might have potentially had something to do with airflow. It really doesn't. I put the solid one on here, which is what they recommend to do if you don't want to take the time to cable manage and you just throw all your cables in the bottom. This is intended to just make it so you can't see in there. And then this is supposed to catch, if you switch it out with this one on the inside, this is supposed to catch any potential RGB lighting you may have to sort of diffuse it. There is one cool feature that I like about this case, and I've done this a million times. On the top, you'll notice that really big gap right by the EPS. If you have the 120 mount fans like I do, and you bring the rail away from that a little bit, it allows you to have plenty of room to still plug in the EPS power if you happen to forget and already have an AIO or something in there. It's not as bad on this guy because there's only fans, but as you can see with this air cooler, it would have been difficult to get my hand in there to plug in the EPS. So you can do it through the top right there. Now, obviously, depending on the size of your hands, determines the size of your. When it was in the 140 mount, I could not get my fingers in there very easily to plug it in. Like, it was actually stopping on my knuckle. If you had it set to 160, there's no way you're gonna get your fingers in there. So it's still recommended to plug in the EPS first, but it's a nice little insurance that in case you forget, you don't have to go ripping your cooler off or taking your motherboard back out to plug those back in. A lot of little features built into this case. Like, for instance, you've got this little cover right here, which pops off. It just says Link. And the idea for this is if you were gonna be doing like underglow lighting or have some of their Link lighting strips underneath the case, you would be able to still get your cable out, use this little hook it on there, and then you could get to your lighting underneath. So it's just a little pass-through. Nowhere does it mention that anywhere in the manual at all. Phil scoured the manual looking for it. Not a single mention of it. It's a very intentional feature that they don't mention in their own manual. So I just thought I would point that out. It is kind of neat. That way, if you wanted to do lighting under your chassis, this is how you would get the cable over there. So not bad. Building in this is pretty straightforward. Nothing was weird. Nothing stood out to me as like a blatant, oh man, I wish they had done it this way. It was actually a pretty pleasant build experience. And I think the cable management on the backside, especially if you have 37 millimeters of depth to deal with on the cables, it definitely is, it's easy to build in. You can fit high-end hardware, you can fit a big cooler and still have room for clearance. Obviously, it looks really nice when you put it all back together. I think I know there's lots of people that are like, I don't care what it looks like, I just want it to function properly. Well, guess what? You can have both. There's nothing wrong with that. Why are you not going? There we go. You can have both, okay? Nothing says you have to choose functionality or form. Many companies will allow you to do both. One other thing too regarding vertical mounts is they do show in the manual and specifically call out the air-cooled Astral card that it will fit it vertically. There's also a little bit of a discrepancy in the manual versus the reviewer guide though. The manual says it'll fit 3-slot vertical. The reviewer guide says 4. So this is actually a 4-slot card. It's like 3.75, wait, 1, 2, 3, yeah, 3.75. But because you do have 2 mounting options on how close to the side glass panel or in towards the motherboard it is, they specifically call out you could vertical mount this. Now I don't have the riser cable meant for this, so I couldn't do that today to show you that. That is an additional like accessory you would have to buy for this case. But that is the only thing so far that this case did not come with that might have been, interesting, to have. But not many cases will actually include the vertical mount because that's just an extra charge. There's some adhesive on there. There we go. It's an extra charge for everybody to have to put a vertical mount in, so they're going to charge you for it. But we'll put the cheese grater front back on without the fan filter for now. There we go. Phil hates that front. I like the front, so I guess we're keeping opinions alive, right? You know what they say about opinions? Mine's right and yours is wrong. I think the only other potential thing I could do to increase like the airflow for this this graphics card, which would be kind of nice, would be open the side vent here, put 2 fans right there blowing directly to it. Other than that, yeah, I don't have any real gripes or complaints about this case. Even like what you get for the price doesn't seem unreasonable to me. And this is where you guys have to sound off in the comments below, because price is 100% subjective, but they have several different prices for this case depending on, there's 3 variants of this case. So let me actually bring up the pricing for you right now. The Frame 4000D, no fans, is $94.99. Now yes, there are cheaper chassis out there, but you have to start looking at the feature set saying, are the features worth it to you? So the 4000D RS is $99.99. That includes fans, but they're not the RGB fans. Then you got the 4000D RS ARGB, which are these fans here, which is $109.99. Now let's put it into perspective here. This particular chassis was $109.99 with these fans. I did take it out, so that's why I would, let's say $94.99, because everything else about the chassis will be the same. The difference is which fans do you get with the chassis. So if I knew I was gonna be doing fans like this and putting something else in, I wouldn't have spent the extra 15 bucks to go with the $109.99 ARGB variant. Now, when I did the $1,500 build, showing how you can still build a hell of a gaming PC for 1,500 bucks, I used the Fractal Pop, which was $114.99. Now it's a bigger chassis overall, but it doesn't have any of the modularity aspects of this. And you can still fit plenty of high-end hardware in here and have plenty of ventilation in this chassis. This chassis, I do not feel, especially with the 3D mesh on the front, the 3D Y mesh, I don't feel there would be any sort of airflow restrictions on this that would make my hardware inside suffer because of either poor mesh porosity or anything else. So I feel like this is actually a really good chassis upgrade versus where the 4000D was with the previous gen. Remember, we built 10 of them. We did 10 builds using a 4000D for the Scholars Collective Community Center, where it was a nice chassis, but it just was very basic. So it's kind of nice to see the evolution of something like that turn into a very modular case like this. Now, one other thing I want to mention is this side panel right here, this side panel. There's lots of pieces in this where Corsair will actually provide you the STL models to where you can then take this, put in your own modeling software and 3D print your own accessories for it. So this is probably a true modders case. It would also be an extremely easy case to tear apart and paint because everything unscrews with the exception of the main square chassis itself. Everything else just bolts onto it. So if you were gonna do a custom paint scheme or 3D print your own parts and stuff for it, where the company is actually providing you the models to say, hey, go print your own accessories for it, that is awesome community aftermarket support that I feel more brands should participate in. So kudos to Corsair for doing that. I feel like this is sort of some of the root kind of enthusiasm that Corsair used to bring to the industry, especially back when like the Obsidian 900D, or even the 800D prior to that. One of my first custom builds I did on this channel was in an Obsidian 900D, and that was a lot of fun. I'd just like to see this concept now make its way all the way to like the 7000D size. So who knows what they're working on in the future. Hopefully we're gonna see a 5000 and a 7000D variant of this, but I do love the aesthetics and I love the modular aspect of it. As somebody that likes to mod cases and paint and do custom stuff, it's nice to have a lot of the work already kind of pre-planned for me where I can easily not have to go drilling out rivets and whatnot. Anyway, sound off down below how you guys feel about the price point, how you feel about the feature set, and how do you guys feel about the value of those two when you put them together. All right guys, thanks for watching, and a huge thanks to Corsair for sending us the 4000D to take a look at and do a build in and give our thoughts. This is where you guys sound off down below, because I'm just one mind. You guys are the hive. And no, I'm not the queen bee.